All right, welcome back to the Gill Athletics Connections Podcast. So glad you pressed play today. We're going to do something unique here. We're going to break a few eggs, maybe hurt a few egos. I don't know, but we're going to have a really frank and I think important discussion about coaching, the different levels, responsibilities, egos. I'm sure are going to come in here into play in regards to decision making. I'm really super excited. So today we are going to talk to three gentlemen who have all worked on the college side. They have been really high level collegiate coaches. We'll find out more about their backgrounds here in a second. And now, all today, or now a little bit formally of today, but we'll get into that as well, coach on the high school level. And I'm super excited about that because, you've been with me for, nearly 300 episodes now. Uh, there's not much of a difference between a high school and a college coach in regards to competencies and passions. It's just a different goal set. Like if you're in NCAA, maybe your goal is to go to nationals. If you're at high school, maybe your goal is to win state. I don't know. We'll find out today. But this whole myth busting I like to do here, this whole idea that because a coach wears a university insignia on their polo, that they're a, air quotes here, better coach or more knowledgeable coach is really bunk. There's some amazing coaches, knowledgeable on the college side and on the high school side. And honestly, I got three real good ones here today. So help me welcome the world's worst boy band names, Corey, Sean, and Bryan. I thought about that all night, by the way, gentlemen. That's what I do at night. Help me welcome from Catholic High School down in Baton Rouge, Corey Mistretta and Sean Brady. And then now, just recently, formerly of Cincinnati Hills Christian Academy. He's also got his own Gill Connections podcast episode, Mr. Bryan Fetzer. Gentlemen, thank you guys for being here today.
Hey, thanks, Mike.
Mike.
Appreciate it.
Now, this is always difficult when we have more than one guest, right? Because of talkover and things like that. But we're going to do our very best. We're all they all know each other, so they're all real respectful of each other. So we're all good on those kind of things. But we'll try to make sure that we get as little talk over as possible. So to get started, let's set the stage, if you will. Why don't you do just kind of a 30,000 foot level, 3-ish minute kind of introduction of yourself, where you've been, where you've coached, and where you're coaching today. And I'm just going to point because of what's on my screen here. And we're just going to start right up here. It's like the Brady Bunch. We're going to start right up here with the Brady Bunch with Sean. Sean, give us a little bit of an introduction of yourself, please.
Sure. So my coaching journey began in, I guess, 1995. I started off as a graduate student, or a volunteer rather, at LSU, and was there for a year. Went to Europe to finish my postgraduate degree. Did some coaching with the Scottish Track and Field Coaching Association, and then came back to finish my thesis, and I volunteered again as a GA at LSU. From there, I went to Utah State University, spent some time in Logan, Utah, and after that, was fortunate enough to come home to my alma mater, Southeastern Louisiana University, where I spent 16 years from 2001 until 2017. And in 2017, I had an opportunity to go to Texas A&M and spend 5 years coaching with and under Pat Henry, and had a great experience there. And then from that point, through a string of events, I ended up taking a job at Catholic High School in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and was able to come home and be close to family and friends. And that's where I've been for the last 2.5 years.
I love it. I feel like that theme of family and friends, probably a little bit in amongst everybody's story, but probably should be more prevalent in a lot of our coaches' stories and journeys. We sometimes tend to forget that, and we go off and forget coming back home and how important that is. Sean, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for being here. Corey, you want to hit not clean up, hit second? I don't know. I'm not into baseball. That was probably a terrible baseball joke. You're next, Corey. How about that?
Yeah, I'll start now. For me, it didn't begin with coaching. I think Bryan and I have a lot in common. We come from coaching backgrounds. I played high school football for my dad. He's in the Hall of Fame here in Louisiana, and we come from a very large Italian Catholic family. And so growing up with two Catholic school teachers and coaches' salaries, we didn't have a whole lot when I was growing up. So for me, it was like, not me. My children are going to have way more, right? Like you're so naive as a child. So I had this 12-year professional outside of academia career before I realized something was missing in my life, right? I wasn't passionate about it. I didn't feel like it was who I was. So I decided, against my dad's best advice, not to do it, but decided to go into education and coaching. So that happened, and I went back to my alma mater to coach and teach, teaching theology and coaching football and track and field. And I spent 5 years there, and then I moved to Hammond, to the Catholic high school there, right next to Southeastern, with a former college teammate who was the principal, asked me to come and join there. So I went there for a couple of years. And then I went to Virginia and was a track coach and an athletic director at Bishop Sullivan Catholic High School in Virginia Beach. And about 12 years in, 10 or 12 years in, I started kind of dreaming about, hey, can I coach at the college level? And so I started looking at what it's going to take, what do you have to do, what are the prerequisites? And a lot of things I was seeing was you had to have a master's degree also, which I didn't have at the time. So I started working on a master's degree. And in that, while I was doing that, I would just look for job postings just to see what's it going to take, blah, 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 blah. And one day I saw Southeastern was looking for a coach. So I called Sean. Sean and I were college teammates for a little while, way back in the day. We're both old men, so way back in the day. And so I called him, and it just kind of worked out. So we can maybe talk about that a little bit later, about how it does take connections sometimes. So I'm not going to be as naive as to say, like, I was such a great high school coach that Southeastern came and got me. No. I called a friend who had an opening, and we worked it out. So I took a huge pay cut to go and try to go coach in college for this opportunity. Plus, it was coming home back to Louisiana for me. So just like Sean said, it's kind of family. So I came back to Southeastern and with Sean, and he and I were together for about 3 years. When he left to go to A&M, then I became the head coach at Southeastern and was there for 5 years. And we can talk way more about this later, but another part of my life was lacking that I wasn't getting at the college level, right? So when I started teaching theology and working with kids, my relationship with Christ became so good. And then you just don't realize when you go to college, if it's not in a Christian school or a Catholic school, you just slowly, it's kind of like when you leave high school and go to college, it's real easy to get away from your faith life. And so just slowly it got away. And so I started missing that and wanting that back in my life. So I started looking to get back out. And we could talk a little later. There's a funny story about how I got here, but now I'm at Catholic High, back with Sean, he and I working together in Baton Rouge, and it's just been a lot of fun. So was over 3 minutes, but
that's all right. That was worth it. I love it. I didn't know you were out in Virginia Beach for a stint. That's pretty cool. Yeah. I love it. All right, and let's have our third guest here, Bryan Fetzer. Give us a little bit of a catch up and what the career you've had and where you're at today.
Yeah, no, I spent 23 years coaching at the collegiate level. I started off coaching football at a junior college in Texas. That's why I played college football. That was kind of all I ever wanted to do. And, sometimes your life takes different journeys, as we all know as coaches. And, I started coaching track there. Ended up spending 23 years, coaching at 7 different schools, Harvard, Berkeley, Mississippi State, Ball State, Gardner-Webb, and finally, my last 8 years, I was the director of track and field and cross country at the University of Virginia, which was an amazing experience. I decided in 2019 that it was time to move on and to get out of college coaching, which was when you talk about identity and you talk about what you've always wanted to do, you make that change and you leave, what you've always been known for. I mean, I laugh every day when somebody checks my Gmail and it says Coach Fetz on it, and they're like, "Do you coach?" And I say, "No, I don't coach anymore." Or somebody refers to people in the community we live in, they refer to me as coach, and I've never, they never knew me as a coach. But did that for 23 years, left, helped Paul Doyle get the American Track League, the Puma American Track League launched after that, and started a company, Iron Faith Nutrition, with a business partner, Eric Figio, and we had that role, and we still have that role into today. Then, a few years ago, Cincinnati Hills Christian Academy up in Cincinnati, I went to high school up in Cincinnati, approached me, and I became the executive director of athletics for 2.5 years. And it was pretty fun. It was definitely a different experience. I actually went and hired 8 different programs, hired college coaches to come in and be my head coach, to run the programs. Matt Eshe, who was at UAB for a number of years, is now the junior high athletic director and the head cross country coach and track coach. And shoot, they just won another conference championship and doing an amazing job. And that was fun. That was great. And then got approached late in 23 about potentially founding another company. And since then, the company's called Optimal Sports. I'm the president of it. We deal with mental optimization and mental health issues among the professional team ranks, college team ranks. We actually have a major soccer club that we deal with in the youth level, and we've got high schools as well, with the head sports psychologist of the Oklahoma City Thunder and Wayne Chappelle, and Rich Hempel, who was the CEO of eCoach, which was a educational platform for basketball. So we launched that company, and it's been interesting going from being in academia, from the college world and the high school world, for the better part of my adult life, to really in the entrepreneur side of things and in the business side that ends up helping high schools and colleges. So it's been fun, and it's obviously fun to get on this. I mean, I listen to the podcast on a regular basis, listening to some friends, and nowadays it's kind of funny. I think Corey and Sean will both attest to it. You listen to some of the coaches and you're thinking, man, I remember that kid was an athlete. Or I remember when that kid just started, and I'm thinking, hold on, that's not a kid, that's a grown man, that's a grown woman. Because now they've got kids and all those kind of things. So it's kind of funny, and I'm excited to talk and share some experiences that the three of us have had, and having an opportunity to be in the college ranks, but in the high school ranks, it's a different perspective, but it's a great perspective because it's still growing and learning and teaching young men and women, and that's what coaching is really about.
That's exactly right. You said perspective. I think that's a key word here that we're trying to explore today in you guys' 3 different journeys here. All 3 of you held positions on the college side that a lot of the coaching body would be envious. Being a coach at Texas A&M, that's a big deal. Being a head coach of Division I, that is a big deal. Working at UVA, Mississippi State, some of the great, universities, that's a big deal. Fetzer said this word that we don't talk a lot about. It's kind of always in the back of our head, but we don't actually say it out loud sometimes. And that's identity, right? When we get to some place, and we all get to define that place differently, but we have that logo on our chest, that becomes an identity. The word, the title coach, Bryan, you've touched on this. I can only think of 2 titles. I'm sure there's a third one. Actually, there is a third one, but there's only 3 out of all the jobs in the world that your title goes with you 24/7, right? Coach. Your neighbor is going to call you coach. Your neighbor has no clue about track and field, but that's coach. Doctor is the other one, right? If the doctor's a doctor, you don't call your neighbor Mr. Smith or Joe. It's, hey, Dr. Bob, Dr. Smith, right? And then clergy, father, sometimes those will go, 24/7 with us, right? I don't call my accountant Joe. It's Joe or Mr. Thomas or whatever, right? So identity is a big deal. I'd like to know from you 3, when you initially started looking towards moving from the college side to the high school side, were there any, and I'm going to identify it as ego. Ego's not bad. Bad ego is bad, but there may have been some ego and identity wrapped into Texas A&M, Virginia. I'm a head coach, Southeast Louisiana. There might be been some identity hangups that maybe caused some pause or some consternation about moving to the high school level. I'd like to know if there was any, and how did you get over that? And Corey, if it's okay, I'd like to start with you.
I think probably because of the ego side of it, I think maybe you're blinded to anything that might be there. Mm-hmm. So when I moved from the business side to coaching in high school and teaching theology, I found my purpose, right, in life. And so for 10 years, that was who I was. And that was like my identity, as Bryan says, and it still is today. And there was that period in there when I started coaching in college that I kind of started losing a little bit of that, which is why I'm back in high school now. But I didn't think about it when I went to make the move. Like, this is who I am and I'll be this person forever. But then the job happens and you don't have, like, I get to spend 4 to 6 hours a day talking about sweet baby Jesus, right? But on the college level, you don't get to do that. You can maybe have a Bible study with a group of kids or go to an FCA meeting, but it's not like the daily connection. And so that's what started missing. And then I have another little story I could talk about later that kind of caused me to start wanting to get back to this identity of who I am and what I'm doing right now.
I like that. Yeah, absolutely. Another word for identity is role. And, I had this exercise. I can't remember what leadership class or something I was taking. The facilitator said, hey, picture yourself on a deserted island. It's just you, and write down all the things that you do back on the real world. And, it's dad, husband, father, faith, son of Christ, coach, etc. And it really struck me. Because when I talk to our coaches, a lot of times coach is number one if they were to rank them, and they forget about husband, wife, father, son, brother, sister. There's a lot of other roles that are more, not arguably more important, are more important. You being a husband, wife is more, your partner is more important than coaching. You being a father or a mother is more important than coaching. What I heard in your story there, Corey, was that you had a role and identity of someone who wanted to teach about Christ and Christ's love, but because of the jobs that you had, that importance, the job requirement was lower to talk like that. And so your journey was, I want to talk more, I want to teach more on that side. So I'm going to go find a position that allows me to do that.
Yeah. So here's a quick story, and I mean, somebody might hear this and get mad, but
I said we're going to break a few eggs today. It's okay.
Sean asked me one day, he said, hey, I'm not going to be here for the head coaches meeting. I need you to go sit in the head coaches meeting, and you just sit there. Don't say a word. Just sit there and take notes for me. So I'm like, okay. He didn't understand I can't do that. But so I go to this head coaches meeting, and at this particular meeting, and this is probably year 3, so it's probably the year Sean's leaving. The head coaches meeting, they were talking about re-establishing the core values for the athletic department. And so they were coming up with terms. So the AD went around the room to every head coach and said, hey, what do you think? Give me a word. So the coaches started going and all the typical stuff that you would think, right? And he got to me, and someone said, don't talk, but I couldn't help myself. So he got to me, and I said, love. And he started laughing. And I said, Coach, if we don't love these kids, what are we doing? Yep. And so it was kind of, there was kind of like this awkward silence. And then he moved on. And then, so as the next 5 years go, when I became the head coach, every time, and as head coaches, things, go wrong and we have issues and things get sour sometimes. Every time something happened, it was easy for me to go back and say, he's acting this way, the AD, because of that. Like, I know, like, his heart's not in the right place. And the frustrating thing about it is, if you think when he was a coach, he was different. And Sean and I spoke about this when we were preparing for this podcast. Like, do athletic directors, and Bryan, you could speak about this maybe. When you leave the coaching side, does the business side of it become so much, especially at the Division I level, that you forget who you are in your heart, right? And so, like, that was kind of even though I didn't know it at that point, that was the beginning of the end, because every time something difficult happened, I was like, there's no love here, and I need to go find that again.
That's there anything to add as I think the only AD on this panel in regards to Corey's story there?
Well, I mean, I think when I was in a unique situation being an athletic director at a Christian high school. I mean, our mission was what it was. So, you hired people for that, that mission. That was number one. And you had to find individuals that met the mission of the school, but also you wanted them success, because don't get me wrong, the parents at our school, they wanted to win. And they're paying a lot of money to send their their son or their daughter to a high school that had an extremely high number one public or private high school academically in the state of Ohio. I mean, phenomenal school. But you're hiring coaches that were successful. And I think that we had a lot of coaches that I hired and that are still getting hired there. It's kind of become the trend now of hiring college coaches that wanted more balance, that wanted a different fit from what they were used to at the college ranks. And we hired the almost the entire Olivet Nazarene football staff to be our football coaches. And it's very unique. And you're talking about, I think about the structure there. The offensive coordinator at Olivet Nazarene became the head football coach at CHCA, and the head football coach at Olivet Nazarene became the offensive line coach at CHCA. There was kind of a mix, but there was an ego. It was, hey, this is what we want to do, and this is kind of where we're going. And I think that's a unique experience going from the college to high school level is, why are you in coaching? I think that's the biggest thing. If you're in it for national TV and all that kind of stuff, well, first off, you shouldn't be coaching track and field. You should be coaching football or basketball, because you're not going to get the ego boost that you might think that's going to happen. But why are you coaching? Why are you there? I think of Matt Eshe, who, again, college coach, hired him as the cross country coach, and just seeing his little kid Miles run around the high school and get to interact with, the high school students. What a great opportunity. A lot more freedom to be able to do things. You have weekends, you're not recruiting, you have that much better life balance than it was, at the college level, which, if I wasn't working, if I wasn't texting on Christmas Day or Thanksgiving or one of the holidays, I felt I was like, doing a disservice to the team that I was coaching. I never took a vacation the entire time in 23 years of coaching, because I thought somebody's going to get better than me. Somebody's going to do one up me. When Corey's talking about mission and life, I think every coach needs to legitimately take a piece of paper and sit down in a quiet place and write down what your actual mission is. Like, why are you doing it? What's the objective? What's the true objective of what you're trying to accomplish? I don't know if I answered that question. I probably went off on a
No, no,
tangent.
I'm going to get us back on the track. That was a great track. These are all tangents. We're all good for this. This is exactly why I have you three here.
Loved
The
it.
the question we're on, that was great value add there. Thank you guys. Is what ego, what identity crisis, if you will, did you have when you first went to go back to coach high school, uh, or become an athletic director in high school? Meaning, for you specifically, Fetz, one day you had the V of Virginia, that v, like no matter where I'm at, I know what that means. And now you go to CHCA. How did you handle any internal angst that might have caused?
There really wasn't any, because I saw that my role had shifted. I went from, leading a team to leading a staff and coming up with policies and coming up with, what we were trying to do. How are we going to fundraise? And I think track and field is so unique, and just as a college coach is so unique. With that is you do all the things that business people do. You do all the things that athletic directors do, especially in high school. You're doing those things. So there wasn't really an ego. It was my biggest problem. And our head of school used to shake his head at me all the time, is I was still thinking that I was at a Power 5 conference. And so I'm like, well, why can't we do that? Why, well, that's not that much money. He's like, well, that's $35,000. We don't have $35,000 to do something. You're like, oh, okay. Well, let's fundraise it. Well, we've never fundraised for that before. Well, let's do it. We have parents, people will pay for things. So I mean, I think it's a mindset change, not necessarily an ego change. It's just you're in a different environment, and your priorities become a little different.
Sean, you had one of the more globally recognized logos on your chest at one point with Texas A&M. Any hangups, concerns? How did you handle going? And I even hate saying going back down or going to, what I'm saying? Because to me, it's just a different, a track coach's value is so tremendous. To me, it does not matter if you're coaching 14 to 18-year-olds or 18 to 22-year-olds. So I even try to be careful with my words here, as far as, you went back down to high school. You went to a different program that competed in the high school level. How did you handle any negative inner thoughts that might have happened for you?
Yeah, sure. I grapple with that. And I think that many coaches in my situation, or in all of our situations, have their identity and their ego tied into their job or their profession. You had mentioned, some of the roles that we do have as coaches, and we wear a lot of hats. For me, I was a husband and a father and a coach, an administrator, a psychologist. All those different hats we wear as people and as coaches. Or something that I did consider. I think the monetary benefits that I had at A&M was probably the hardest thing for me to step away from. I took a big pay cut when I did come to Catholic High. Yet it was still a salary that was better than the job I had left, 5 years prior to. I do believe it is about balance. For me, it was a decision that boiled down to, where I am in my life, and was I happy in being the best at all of those different roles that were mentioned before. I thought that it was pretty easy for me, because I just got to a point where I was missing my son grow up. He was 7 when we left Hammond and moved to College Station, and he was starting baseball and football, and there were very few times that I was actually able to make a practice or even a game. And I would show up, and there'd be one inning left in this baseball game, and he would rush off the field and come give me a hug and say, "Dad, did you see the hit that I made?" And unfortunately, I missed that one. And then 2, 3, 4 times into this, and it began to wear on me, honestly. I think being at a Power 5 program, it is very time consuming, and you're never off the clock. As Bryan mentioned, the phone is ringing all the time, and you're returning texts and emails literally every day of the year. And I didn't feel like that my time at home was really my time. I was still on the clock, for Texas A&M, and there was no mistake that the job title at A&M was to win national championships. And there was a point, I think, a few years into my job that we had finished. We'd gone to the SEC meet, and from the SECs, we went to the national championships. From the national championships, I went to USA trials, and then Jamaica trials, and back to USA's, our juniors rather. And I was gone 40 days. Out of the 40 days that were included all of those competitions, I was home for 4 of them. So that was hard for me to reconcile with my son and with my wife, who, she had not grown up in an athletic family. She had married a coach, and I got married late in life, and it was a real challenge for me to justify that being away so much that I had thought there was a time that I needed to make a change. I remember I was in Jamaica for the Jamaican trials when I got a call from Coach Pete Boudreaux, who's a legendary coach at Catholic High. Was actually still on staff until last year, 53 years at Catholic High. And we had a very candid conversation, just about life and about the quality of life that he had and was afforded at Catholic. And I decided to make a call, and a few weeks later, here I am in Baton Rouge, home, closer to family, close to friends, and it was a real change in rhythm, a real change in day-to-day operations. But it's been beautiful experience. My son is now at Catholic High, so he rides to work with me every day. He's a wrestler, and after his practice is over, he comes out to track practice, and then we ride home together. So it was just a unique opportunity for me to spend more time with my son and to grow with him in the years that I thought were very important in his development.
I loved everything about that story except for that your son's a wrestler. I'm going to tick off every wrestler or friend of a wrestler here. I'm not a fan. We're going to double click into that word balance here in a second, but I want to get some logistics first before we start exploring those kind of topics. You guys have all done the job as a college coach, and now you have done or are doing the job of a high school coach or AD, or, obviously very intimately involved in what a high school coach would do. If you could think of maybe let's just pick one, since we have 3 of us here, and Fetzer, we're going to start with you. What is one of the differences? So we're still a track coach. The title is still the same. You're a track coach. Maybe the objective is still to make people as fast as possible or jump far as possible. The athletic side, maybe that's still the exact same. We're just maybe a different age and stage of whether you're coaching high school or college. What is the real difference for someone who's out there who's thinking, man, I can't coach high school because they don't have standards. I don't know that, we know they do, but what's a difference, a concrete difference between coaching college and high school? Fetz?
I think one of the things that we talked about, being an athletic director is perspective. And I think that's probably the hardest to go. I mean, Sean just talking about Texas A&M, the perspective is at A&M, the expectation is to win a national championship, to contend for a national championship, send people to the Olympics, send people to nationals. Whereas perspective in a high school might be getting that kid that has never come out for a sport before to enjoy it and to be part of a team and to learn community and to learn understanding of why they're there. Perspective is such a big thing, because in high school, you're going to have such a range of individuals. You literally will have a kid that has never run before in their life come out for a team that's right beside a kid that's going to win a state championship. I say cross country is probably the biggest range per se of it. Because you might have a kid that's a front runner on your team, and then you literally might have the kid that's never run before come out because they need a PE credit, or their parents have encouraged them to go. And the blooming side, the quote unquote late bloomers, you have kids that are freshmen that are, tiny, and all of a sudden they had a growth spurt and they grew 5-6 inches, and that kid might have been a sprinter, and all of a sudden they're a shot putter. Or you're not going to have that in college. It's not going to happen. Somebody's not going to get recruited as a sprinter, and all of a sudden they, gain 70 pounds and they grow 8 inches, and all of a sudden now they're a discus thrower. That just, it's just not going to happen necessarily. So I think the perspective part is a big part of it. And I'd be really curious what Sean and Corey had to say about it, because, they're actually doing it right now. I was talking to coaches about it.
That's a perfect throw to you, Sean.
Yes, it's definitely a difference. I think that was a challenge. It really was a challenge for me, stepping down from an elite Division I program and then coaching kids that have never hurdled or never thrown or never jumped before. Right. So I found that in my first year, it really tried my patience. It really was a challenge to me as a coach to find ways that were different from what I'd done in the past. This was my first high school gig, so I never started in high school. I went right into the collegiate ranks, and what I found is that the level of investment for some athletes was not as high as I probably wanted it to be. And again, I deferred to Pete Boudreau on this. And when I first took the program, and I was handed this team, through the fall, I was really struggling because we had a group of athletes, and I said, there's no way that we're ever going to be successful with the group that I have out here. We had about 45 kids or 50 kids. Well, we didn't have any of the kids that were multi-sport athletes, that were football or basketball players that also ran for us. And I was really, really worried, to be quite honest with you. And as the seasons ended and the basketball team started coming out and football players started coming out, okay, I said, okay, here's the group that we've got that we can actually do something with and try and be successful. I still grapple with that. I still grapple with the investment side, and I know that I'm probably as invested as any one of our kids that are out there. And the challenge is to be inclusive, to give everyone the experience that they need. I don't think the coaching side is really that much different. It's still a relationship business. It's still about people, and it's still about people and about trust. And once you win the kids over and once you trust them, then the coaching is just coaching. It really is. Now, do you have to dummy it down some? Yeah, a little bit. There are those moments when you're pulling your hair out because you're trying to get a kid to do something that they just physically cannot do because they're not mature enough to do it. And as long as you can identify that and set up your practice and your training planning to accommodate the physical shortcomings, then it's okay. But it definitely was a challenge.
Now, Sean, something you brought up there that I thought was interesting. You coached combined events too,
I
right?
did. Yes.
So you mentioned your first statement. I think a lot of people could shake their heads and understand when you're talking about, a kid. Let's use A&M as an example. A kid who comes to A&M, it's like, oh, well, they came to A&M they were already at a fairly high level in their athleticism. Here, I'm dealing on the high school. I'm dealing with a freshman who, maybe they don't even know what sport is. To Bryan's point, there's the first time they're doing anything, and so you've got to teach the rudimentary, the fundamentals even more. However, Sean, I have to imagine, even at the vaunted A&M, when you were first recruited or turning people into combined eventers, there were events that they had never done. So they were kind of that maybe they were, I was going to say they were that little duckling, but maybe they were a little bit better than a duckling because they had we knew they had some athleticism, but
Sure.
still, even a kid who's running 13 flat in the hurdles, first time you throw him to the shot put or the pole vault is going to look like a little duckling. So you're kind of dealing with that now on a much bigger scale on the high school side.
And that is a great analogy, Mike. There are a lot of parallels between the teaching multi-event kids that when I recruited multi-eventers, I looked for a couple of different events that I liked, and here everything's new.
Yeah, that's the way
we get kids that have had some experience in summer track, and then kids that have run in middle school, but for the most part, it was just about participation. And this is a big step up from that. We have a history of winning. I think Pete won like 20 state titles in his time at Catholic. So I had big shoes to fill and great expectations when I came in. Our staff is made up of former college coaches, as Bryan mentioned earlier. Our basketball coach was at Vanderbilt and Louisiana Tech and at UNO. Our baseball coach was a former player at LSU and has had some collegiate experience. Our football coach came to us from TCU and from LSU as an analyst. Our soccer coach was at Kentucky for a while. So I did have some people to lean on and to get some advice from when I did take the position. And that was very helpful. Now, again, there are those days, that you want more than they possibly can give, and you have to put it into perspective. You have to meet them where they are and figure out ways. I think in a lot of ways, it's made me a better coach because I've had to digress in some areas and really take it from step one. Whereas, at A&M, you got kids that were very talented. Even the multi-eventers that you brought in, you knew they had some talent in some areas. It's a unique challenge and one that I've grown to enjoy in some ways, and other ways has caused me some source of frustration. But at the end of the day, I think, again, coaching is coaching, and that's the business we're in.
Corey, what's been the biggest difference you've noticed between coaching college and coaching high school track and field?
Well, since I did, first of all, don't let Sean be so humble. He has, from the beginning, has been a guy who's about developing athletes. So he's doing just fine. We don't have to hold any benefit dinners for Sean. He'll be okay. But since I went high school to college, back to high school, I have a different perspective on it as well. And I don't really see a whole lot of difference. You're still just coaching. And then there's so much available to kids today because of social media and because of just information availability to them. So the one thing that I noticed from my first time coaching high school to the second time is that because I have that college coach moniker, they listen a little more. Right? So like if you're just some dinky old high school coach, right? Like the kids are like, I saw something online, and you don't, you better show up every day knowing what you're talking about, because the kids know, right? They have a lot of information already. You can't fool them, right? And so, like, one of the things I like to say all the time is, for kid, you give them the prescription for the day, and you need to be able to explain to them why you're doing that. And because you can't fool them, you can't lie to them. Like my dad, way back in the day, he could lie to kids. You just got to do it this way because that's the way we do it. And kids were like, yes, sir, coach. Right. And they would just go run through walls for you. You can't do that to kids anymore. But other than that, I really just think it's still just coaching. And like Sean said, building relationships. Bryan said something about these kids that come out and use cross country as an example. We had a kid show up cross country this year. And again, I took over for Pete Boudreau. So please don't screw it up. Please don't screw it up. Please don't screw it up. Right. Sean said he won 20 state titles. He won 20 plus outdoor. He won 20 plus indoor. He won 20 plus in cross. So he's a multiple time national coach of the year. And he was here. Sean said 53. It was 57 years at one school. And it's just crazy. So to try to follow a guy like that is crazy. But if you're in the classroom, right, and you're building relationships in the classroom, those relationships help kids want to maybe be part of what you're doing as a coach. So we've been training for cross country all summer long. And then school starts, and I build this relationship with my students. And then, so in the middle of August, after school's already in a couple of weeks, this kid says, I want to come out for cross country. And we're like, man, we've already been going, but come on, we'll just throw you out there. Well, he could not run. And he was so weak, he couldn't even stand up to run. So he ran in this squatted position. Well, he's probably going to be the most improved guy on the team because we keep him out there, and he couldn't even finish a warm up. And now he's running, and he just ran under 20 minutes in the 3 mile. And so we're getting there. So it's fun to do that kind of stuff, but it's just coaching. Again, and while we're here, right, just talk about how you can make the transition. It's really no different. It does help with kids if they know you coached in college. They kind of think, not that it's true, but they think that, he must know what he's talking about.
Now, two things, I'm just going to lob this up, and whoever wants to respond. Two things that I thought I would hear that I didn't hear on the difference, and I'm going to call them both negatives. So you have a negative on one, but not the other. And when I say you don't have another, I know there is to a degree. So on the college side, now that you're on the high school side, you don't have recruiting. And yes, I know we've had lots of high school coaches here, and all of the successful ones have talked about how they recruit their hallway. So I know you have recruiting on the high school side, but you're not flying to, Sean, you mentioned going to the Jamaica trials and, the youth championships. You're not doing that as a high school coach. On the other side, when you're a college coach, you don't have as much. I know there is some, but I would have to think social media tells me that on the high school side, you're dealing with disgruntled parents. Why isn't Johnny in the starting lineup, Corey? I know this is his first day of cross country practice and you're halfway through season, but Johnny is my boy. Talk about those two. Those are major differences. How have you handled those? Is social media wrong? Do you just have perfect parents? And I know we have to be sensitive. You're at Catholic now today, so let's not ruin our fundraising and our parent teacher conferences that we have coming up here.
Well, we just recently went through tryouts, and we had started the year, had 130 kids that had signed up for track. Many of those were cross country that are just going to stay in cross and train for cross. But 130, we only have 5 on staff, and we have a very accomplished veteran staff working with these kids. But at the end of the day, 130 was too many. So we decided to have some tryouts. And when after a couple of weeks of testing and a battery of different exercises and protocols we put them through, we eliminated or we had to cut down about 21 people, and another 20 that we're going to keep around through the fall and see how they grow and mature. But you made mention of this earlier. You never really know what a 14-year-old kid is going to turn into, and that was something that I grapple with. Our parents have been fantastic here, to be quite honest with you. They're very supportive for the most part. They show up, they help us run meets. They're our fundraising arm. They run our concession stands and help us in a number of different ways. But because of that, they expect to see some results, and they expect to see their son get some opportunities. In the early season, we have the opportunity for us to enter more kids in meets, and then as the season progresses and we get into the championship season, there's only two entries per event, rather. So there's a lot of people that are left on the side and don't have that opportunity, and parents they do want to know why. We're fortunate at Catholic that our administrators and our athletic director is very supportive, and they field a lot of those questions for us so that we don't have to have a whole lot of one-on-ones with parents. Now, there are those times at meets where we get some very poignant questions as to why this is happening and this is happening. A lot of those we try and address at the parents meeting. We have a meeting with parents which we'll have next month, and we'll go over a lot of the things and opportunities and how young men are going to be able to create opportunities for themselves. But at the end of the day, we're limited, and with the number of kids that we have that have come out, there just aren't that. There's not a place for everybody. Not a place, I should say. Let me get a little more specific. There's not a place for everybody to compete at every competition.
Right.
And that's not unlike when I was at A&M. We had 130 something kids on staff there and or on the roster, and not everybody got to travel every week. Not everybody got to compete at every meet. They had to wait for some home meets for those opportunities. But the parents have been good for the most part, and we get some silly questions. I've got a kid 2 years ago that I thought was going to be a fantastic long jumper, and his mother wanted to know why he wasn't coming from a further run back. That in middle school he came from 130 feet, and now I've got him at a 12-step approach, just around 60 feet, and he's not jumping, as far as she thought he should jump. Well, I explained that there's a process, and that we're trying to teach your son the way to jump properly and with great technique. And then as he improves, we'll start to move him back. But just having those conversations sometimes is a little bit frustrating. Telling parents that, their kid is just not ready, and that there are other people ahead of him on the depth chart that we feel are better situated and suited to compete at that time. Those conversations, they do come up, but for the most part, we try and address those early. We try to address that at the coaches' meeting so they have an idea of what to expect going in.
Fetz, as an athletic director, how did you handle I'm gonna call it over parent involved, because they are still their children, right? So I'm thinking I have an eighth-year-old, eighth grader and fifth grader. They're both doing sports, and they're still my kids. I still care. Now I've come from the coaching background, so I know what to ask and what to just tell my son. Hey, you got to get better. I guess So, Fetzer, I'm curious, as an athletic director, how did you handle that, and where did you learn it from? And what I mean by that is you weren't an athletic director your whole life, so you had to figure out your own culture of how you were going to be an athletic director. And you're still on mute, by the way, please.
Oh, sorry about that. I can tell you right now, I was the absolute worst at that. I mean, my head of school had multiple conversations with me because, there was a couple of meetings that, especially early on, that a parent would come in and be complaining about their fourth grade son being on the B team. And I think, unfortunately, I was like, does it really matter? Who cares? Your kid's in fourth grade.
Mm-hmm.
Like get a life. Like, that's ridiculous. But, I mean, him and I, Dean Nicholas was a complete godsend as a head of school at CHCA, because trying to work through me learning as a new athletic director coming from the college side, where, again, let me go back to that word perspective. The perspective was, super high. And, I'm thinking like, who cares about, playing time as a sixth grade level, or what team you might be on at this time, or what position you're playing, because I was thinking a lot more, longer term view. So it was definitely learning, but I think it's educating parents and letting them know, and kind of readjusting the narrative of what perspective is and what is important. And I think that's part of a mission of a coach, of an administrator, is not necessarily, saying, hey, what you're thinking is wrong, but letting them know what is actually best for the long-term progression of your son or daughter, learning life. I mean, because you're trying to teach life skills. That's sports. Sports do life skills better than anything else that there is. It's teaching team, teaching how to get along with other people. How do you function as a group of people for a common, good? What are you trying to accomplish? And it's something that really can't be taught in any other form or fashion, because there's pressure on you, because there is the pressure to win when you get to a certain level, when you get up to, maybe varsity, as opposed to, junior high or to the youth side of things. And I think it's the job of a coach and an administrator at the high school level, but also at the college level, is to teach and understand the parents or the entities around you of what you're trying to accomplish. And I think when Sean or Corey, one of them, said they have a team meeting right at the beginning of the year, and you got to set the level of expectations. And this is what the expectation level is. This is what we're trying to accomplish. These are the goals. Are we meeting those goals? Are we meeting those expectations? We had parents sign a parent contract that said, hey, this is your role as a parent. And we set up guidelines along the way that said, hey, if you want to talk about playing time, talk to the coach first. You want to talk, you still have an issue, then you're going to talk to whoever. Then we set up our administrative side to be very collegiate, where I had different athletic directors or different individuals that, were the sports supervisors per se. And you had to go through them. And the only time it would ever get up to me is if it was a serious issue. And 99.9% of the time I wasn't going to meet with it, because, again, it's setting that level of expectation. And it's expectation levels we set at college coaches. You want a scholarship increase? You've got to do X, Y, or Z to get it. You want to travel? This is where you got to do. You want to go to the Texas Relays? You better produce results that can get you to the Texas Relays. We're not taking you on a field trip to hang out and and hug and high five. That's just not the reality of life, because that's not what's going to happen in life, in business, in the real world. Your boss isn't going to give you a pay raise because you showed up to work every day. Your boss is going to give you a pay raise if you produce. And unfortunately, society today has kind of gotten that out of whack. And there's a lot of kids and parents that think, well, hey, I'm here, so I deserve. And it's very entitled, type of generation, both at the parent level and at the kid level.
I think that is our first old man get off my lawn generational comments. I can't believe it took this long, and I'm a little surprised it came from Fetzer. Corey, I had also mentioned about recruiting. How much do you miss recruiting on the college level?
I didn't recruit the same way these other two guys did. Our recruiting budget didn't allow me to recruit as far as traveling goes. So my recruiting and relationship building, because I think that's all recruiting is as well, is the same thing I do recruiting high school kids in the hallways, right? We're building relationships with kids. So I don't miss that. Like, I don't think that I miss that or see any difference than what's going on because I wasn't spending a lot of time traveling. I mean, Sean tells crazy stories, about coming home from the national meet and just getting on an airplane the very next morning, right, to go somewhere. So I never experienced any of that stuff. So
okay.
really can't talk that much about that.
And I appreciate that you had a different experience because one of the things, and it's hard. No matter who and where we are in a box, and it is hard for us to get out of that box, right? And so some of the examples that Sean and Fetz, both of you have given, I reminded myself that I needed to have this not disclaimer, but the discussion of some of the things that you guys are describing for college coaching doesn't exist, or the opposite does exist on the college level. Fetzer, I'll harken back to your Ranger Community College days. You had mentioned earlier, this is what kind of struck it to me, is when you were talking about, on the college level, you're not going to necessarily have a kid. I kind of think of the fawn deer that comes in and becomes, a big buck. That's not true. At some smaller schools, they're just trying to get kids to make a team. Right. So this is not me pointing fingers. It's just hey, there is as great a scope between the most hardship college out there, meaning they are trying to get 5 kids on a roster for cross country, up to whatever you think the top may be, A&M, Florida, whatever. So there's a big difference there. So Corey, what made me think about that with the way you answered that is maybe you didn't have a budget to fly everywhere, anywhere that, at some of the schools that Fetzer had, not every school Fetzer had, and A&M maybe for sure, I don't know. But did you have to be in the office at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night on a lot of nights to talk to 18-year-old kids? Did you have 18-year-old kids who, and this is a society thing, I don't necessarily blame 18-year-old kids, but did you have 18-year-old kids that did not want to come to your school, but they did not want to tell you no, and so you spent a lot of time recruiting them, and then they went to wherever else? What about those aspects of recruiting?
Yeah, that definitely is nice to not have to do that. Sean mentioned earlier, and Bryan also mentioned that they worked 365. So at the college level, you're working 365, and the phone doesn't stop ringing. You're recruiting, like nowadays, everybody's recruiting internationally. So the time change is all crazy. And if in the middle of the night, you might go to bed and the phone rings, and your wife doesn't understand why you're picking the phone up. Because if I don't, the other college coach is going to pick it up and I might lose this kid. So you are always talking to kids on the phone. So that's different, because when we leave here, Sean just joked the other day when we were leaving, he was like, yep, going home already. It was like 5:30 and we were going home, and it was like, that's nice. And so those are the types of things that are different, where you don't have to be available to these kids all day long, all night long, or whatever. So I think when you get to high school, some of that relationship building happens inside your classroom. Some of it happens in the hallways. Sometimes it happens outside of, at practice. But after you leave campus, that's not happening. You might have, a certain position group that you're working with, and you might, text some kids. I send stuff to the cross country team, I'll just on a group app and send them something, but it's not like this ongoing thing constantly.
So we kept talking about the word balance, and so I think it's time now to double click into that. But my question is going to be, can a college coach have balance? And, balance is defined in a lot of different ways. It's also not always, if you were to think of balance as 50-50, it's not 50-50 every day either, right? We have seasons of things. I'm not hearing a lot of positivity towards college coaches having balance. I do know of, I won't bring up their names because they're not here, but I know of two coaches, both at big programs. I'm trying not to identify anybody. Both at big programs. I'll tell you this way: both Division I coaches, in different ways that they work at it, but they are very intentional at balance in regards to time off from coaching, time away from coaching, how they recruit. You mentioned, timing of calls and things like that, and visiting recruits and stuff like that. So I'm not hearing a lot of positivity that a coach on the college level can have balance. Do you think it's possible? I think we're starting with Fetzer on this one.
I would say I had a little bit more balance at the end of my career. And I would think if I ever went back into it, which I honestly don't think that will ever be the case. The Lord would have to do some serious convincing for that to happen. And my wife would probably have to be a big part of that. But I think I could do a little bit better job. But I also understand it's your personality, and every coach is different, right? I mean, the coaches have different personalities. I am very type A, very organizationally driven, very, hey, we got to get it done. I'm competitive as all get out. I hate losing. I hate not having success. Losing is kind of a misnomer with track and field because everybody loses all the time. Think about it's the only sport that you end on failure in some events. So, but I think it's a little personality. There's some college coaches that can have great success, and I think the level depends whether you're in D2, D3. If you're a Power 5 or Power 4 school now, I guess it is. Depending on where you're at and what the expectations are from the administrative side of things. I mean, the reality of things is most administrators could give a crap less if you win a championship in track and field or not. As long as football is producing, or as long as men's basketball or volleyball or whatever the other sport is at the school, they want to make sure they don't have issues in coming into their office. They don't want parents calling. They don't want the media. They don't want things on social media. They want you to survive and stay out of the fast lane, right? I mean, that's reality. But if you're at a junior college or a Division III, I mean, I have friends that are head coaches of Division III and absolutely have so much great work balance. The best work balance I ever had was at Harvard. I mean, the Ivy League, you had certain limitations. There were certain times when, hey, you could recruit when you couldn't recruit. And when recruiting was done. Like, we weren't getting transfers in. I mean, they're even transfer portal age. Harvard's not getting transfers in. They're not allowed. They're not allowed by the school policy to take transfers. So, I mean, I think where you're at also depends. If I would stay in it, or if recommendations post, get in the Ivy League. If you can get in the Ivy League, if you can get into a Division III conference, like, with Williams and some of those places, there's some great schools that understand what athletics is and hasn't kind of lost sight of, the craziness of name, image, and likeness and the transfer portal and all those kind of things, because kids are going there to go to school. They're going there for life experiences. They're not going there thinking they're going to be an Olympian, that they're going to be. And you can have some great kids. And we saw it in Division I this year. There's a couple of transfers out of Division III that end up going and, doing amazing at the national championships. So, I think, balance, it also goes to perspective, where you're at, and where you're at in your career too, I think has a lot to do with it. If you're a young coach, you're trying to build your career, it's a little different. I mean, obviously Corey's perspective comes from somebody that was business, high school, wanted the challenge of college, and then goes back to high school. Sean, major college level and it goes into high school, we aren't necessarily at that level that we're grinding. My perspective or my thought process was a lot different when I was coming out of Ranger Junior College and at Gardner Webb and Ball State, because I was trying to get to the A&M. I was trying to get to the major college level. So it was a different thought process. I didn't care about balance. And I wasn't married either, which is another bit. I didn't have kids. Yeah. Now that I'm married, she gives me my balance pretty quick when she goes, hey, we're having dinner. There's no phone calls.
All right.
I don't know, Corey, if you guys get that experience, but I mean, it's been a rude awakening for me to go, oh, sorry, dear.
Sean, that's why I was going to go to you next. If you agree with what Fetzer said, remember, we're talking globally of college coaching, come a little bit out of your A&M cocoon experience there. But if you agree with Fetzer that, let's say 90% of colleges administrations aren't hammering that you have to win conference or nationals, which I know that was a big thing at A&M. So that's why I say come out of that cocoon a little bit. Why do we generally decide to not have balance as a 25 to 30-year-old coach when we're first? Is it to Fetzer's point there at the end, is it an age and stage thing? Is it ego? Is it a wrong thought of how I should build my career? What might your opinions be on that?
I think it's a combination of a lot of those. And having coached at a small mid-major and at a mid-major and then at a Power 5, those were very different job descriptions. Mm-hmm. When I was a head coach at Southeastern, the amount of pressure and stress that I placed on myself far exceeded what my athletic director wanted from me, or wanted from our program, I should say. Fast forward a few years to A&M, very different. The expectations were we need to try and win or be in a position to win a national title every single year. If we were consistently in the top 3 while I was at Southeastern, that was fantastic, and I was being praised, and everything was good, and I was right with the world, and I did have an opportunity for some balance there. As a head coach, I think it's different as an assistant coach. I really believe it depends on the program you're in, the level you're in. When you're young, and Bryan made reference to this, you're cutting your teeth. You're trying to figure out how to move on and progress to the next stage. And so a lot of that is personal, but a lot of it depends on where you coach and who you coach for, and the university that you currently is writing your paycheck. It is difficult, and my visceral response to the question about balance is there's just not any balance. There really is not as a coach. It really depends on your perspective and what you believe you want to go and how far you want to take this thing. And it changes throughout your life. Marriage for me was a real turning point, and that opened me up to some different perspectives. And you're not only doing this for yourself, but again, you're doing this for your wife and for your family. And it's a real juggling act. It really is. When I got into coaching, philosophically, I had some ideas of what I wanted to do and why I was doing what I was doing. I was a teacher and an educator. I was a mentor. I wanted to see if I could create an environment for young men and women to flourish and hone their skills and be the best they could be. And I still think that's a part of the pillars of my philosophy. As I was exiting the collegiate level, NIL came into effect. The transfer portal came into effect, And that really uprooted some of my philosophical beliefs and values about why I was in this sport. I'll give you one example. I had a young lady that was with me for 4.5 years, or 5 years rather. She had a COVID year, and then she was coming back for her 6th year, and decided that she had gotten a bigger and better deal from another college in state that was just, about 90 miles down the road from us. And we had several discussions about this, and she ended up taking a pretty big NIL deal to go compete for somebody else after she had, been arguably one of the most successful athletes at the college where she started. She was a tremendous. She even set the collegiate record, and then was with us all throughout her 4 years, and then into her fall training season. And the next thing, she's competing for the other side and competing against us. And I had a real issue with that as a coach, because we had developed a tremendous relationship, and she had grown into a fantastic athlete, and had all these accolades and all this success. And all of a sudden, because the school down the road was paying her a little bit more money, she decided to up and leave. Now, she was from a family of 8, and the money was pretty significant, and it was meaningful to her as a young woman, and moving forward after college, that was pretty significant. I just felt like I felt I was hurt, and to be quite honest, I felt cheated, and I felt that that all those things that I had gotten into coaching for had been kind of turned upside down. And I was glad to escape those type of situations. And not that doesn't happen and kids don't transfer in high school, but it's a lot less likely. Right. And the relationships that you develop and foster throughout their time here is it's a little more sacred, I think.
We could do a whole 10-hour set on NIL, transfer portal, the whole nine.
I'm taking notes.
Don't you pass that for now. Corey, for you, in the same vein of this question, I'm curious, because what we're describing here in regards to maybe at a younger, in your first initial age and stage of your career, throw balance out the window. I'm 90% coaching, 10% of the rest of my life. And then, as we move along in our age of stage, getting married, one of those potential marks. That's no different than what we see in the business world, other aspects of the world. That's not necessarily unique. However, I don't necessarily hear that for high school track coaches. I don't hear of a kid that graduates with a secondary education degree and says, man, I'm going to go to such and such high school and we're going to win 20 state titles like Coach Boudreaux did. I don't necessarily hear that. Why not? Or maybe I just don't have my ear in the right place.
Why do you think it's not, we're spending too much time doing it?
You started off as a high school coach.
Right.
I didn't necessarily hear you say, when I first started coaching high school, Mike, boy, it was all about how do I get that high school to the state championship? You had other responsibilities. I assume you were a teacher and things like that. Yeah. I don't necessarily hear that. Fetzer and I share a lot of similarities, that we had our eyes on the prize to get to the Power Five, and every step was calculated, some better than others, right? To get there, right? I don't hear that on the high school coaching side, where a 1A coach says, man, I can't wait I'm going to go to become a 2A and then a 5A and a 6A, whatever. I don't necessarily hear that in mass.
Yeah, no, I think I'm like Bryan. I think I hate losing more than I like winning. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I was always wanting to win, and God had a plan for that. So there has been success that has followed me. I mean, just a quick story with football. When I first started coaching, my brother, he was coaching for a long time at our alma mater and won a whole bunch of state titles coaching in wrestling and a couple in football. And I would talk to him and I would say, how's the track team doing? And he was like, nobody cares about track, man. With the football voice, right? And like, no one cared about track. I'm like, there's no way you guys have won back-to-back football titles and don't have a state championship track team. If I was at that school, we would win state in track. And he laughed at me. So my first job when I go there, I go to football in the summer. The first day I show up and the kids start walking in and I'm like, man, look at that cat. Look at that cat. Look at that cat. There was some dudes, right? And so I just started talking to guys about track and getting them excited about it. And so we go to the state meet that year. We come in sixth place. And that built some excitement around the school and around the football team. So that next summer at football practice, there were 7 or 8 guys at the end of the sprinting line racing each other saying, hey, coach, next year I'm going to be on that relay team at the state meet. And so the next year we win that year we win the state title. We win the state title the next year. Then we have some academic issues, so we don't do so well. And then we win the state title again. So we win 3 and 4 years. And it wasn't anything necessarily that I was doing other than getting the right kids excited about doing what, coming out and running track. So then I moved to another school and we did the same thing and we won again. And then I went to Virginia and we did the same thing, just getting kids excited, not putting them in the right places. We win the first state championship in the history of the school, right? So we go to Southeastern and with Sean and we have success, and it's just through getting kids excited. So yes, I've always wanted to win. I don't think I was always interested about going necessarily to the highest level, but just wherever I was, I had to win. And so that's what we're going to do here, right? Like, we're just trying to win and trying to get the right kids excited about it. We have a football team that just won the state championship last year. So we're trying to get those guys excited about coming out, all the right ones, and then we could put them in the right place, right? So did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a lot of empathy for our high school coaches. Sometimes I'll catch wind of a college coach that'll say, express some frustration of a high school coach. Well, how come they don't do this with their hurdlers, or how come they can't develop X, Y, or Z? And, I have to remind our college coaches sometimes, like, hey, don't forget, the majority of our high school coaches are teachers as well. So they're doing, and my wife has recently, last few years, started substitute teaching, but on long term. And she comes home and I'm she's only doing it for a 30-day, 60-day block. And I'm like, oh my God, think about it. The person you're subbing for does this for 8-9 months of the year. Like, oh my goodness. Oh, and by the way, you're supposed to also coach any sport, whether it's track and field or any sport. Where does that leave time for professional development inside that sport? Because they're doing professional development in their teaching. Oh, and they're a husband or a wife, and we talked about all those different roles. It's like, man, our high school coaches, God bless you that you know anything, for crying out loud. It's amazing. So no, that's perfect. A little bit more of a tactical question. I'm gonna start with you, Sean. Someone's listening right now, and if they're like in their first or second year of coaching college, and maybe have had this inkling of coaching high school, maybe they can see like, oh, that's like, I could do that. Like, I just graduated a year or two ago with a education major or whatnot. But maybe, and you guys all did this later in your careers, you're 10, 20, 30 years into your career, you've got some PE degree, or not even a PE, because that's applicable to high school. You've got some history degree from 20 years ago. How does someone who's coaching college track, how do you even coach high school track? And what I mean by that is it's air quotes here, easy to go say, hey, I'm not doing college anymore. I'm going to go volunteer or get a assistant job at the local high school. But that, we know what stipends are. They're nothing. I'm talking about to actually work and have a career. How does someone even begin to do that?
begin to coach in college, or
no, to go, you're 30, you've got a 30-year college career. How in the world? Because I know there's teaching certificates there. Are there other opportunities besides being a teacher? To still coach high school. How does someone who is 40 years old right now do what you guys are doing?
Well, I was fortunate that we are at a private high school, and a lot of the teaching certificates and things that are a qualifier to be a teacher or coach in high school in the public schools are not required for the private school. So I was able to skirt around some of those issues because I had a professional degree, because I had a master's degree, and I had some other things on my resume that allowed me to come into this position. But it is difficult, and it is hard, harder than you may expect. Being a qualified coach is not all that you need to be a high school coach. And actually, it's easier going the other direction, I would say, in some ways.
And that's not easy, by the way, but I think I would agree with you.
It's not easy. I mean, becoming a college coach, you've got to pay your dues, and you do now have to have some certificates and show some promise and expertise in certain areas to get to even get an interview. But going the other direction, yeah, there were some challenges, and there were a few things that I had not anticipated. Actually, I did apply for another high school in Louisiana that it was a public school, and I didn't even get an interview because I did not have the teaching certificate and the qualifications that you needed. Although I was eminently qualified on the coaching side, I did not have a teaching certificate and was not, in their opinion, certified or qualified to teach what they needed. A lot of times I teach a health class here, and I am a PE coach, and I coach track and field. But had I gone into had there been a position available in, let's say, chemistry or mathematics or history, I don't know that I would have qualified for those jobs.
I thought I was about to learn something new about Sean, that he was some kind of chemistry geek that I never knew about. No. He's like, oh, I could have totally taught chemistry.
Oh, you'd be surprised.
No, definitely not chemistry.
Yeah.
But biomechanics.
Yeah. So I did have some things that allowed me to segue into this job that I may not have been qualified for in a public school setting.
Corey, you coached high school and then college and back to high school. Was it easier for you because you had previous high school coaching experience?
No, I think the same thing because I don't have an education degree as well. So and I've been in private schools my whole life, Catholic private schools, my whole career. So I agree that it is hard. It's sad that it's hard because there is a teacher shortage. Right. And so like your wife is working because there's a teacher shortage, correct?
Right.
And so like there's teacher shortages, but yet they won't hire people who are highly qualified to teach a particular subject just because they don't have the teaching degree that says that they know how to do it. Right. But Sean could teach, a chemistry class or a biomechanics class or something like that, a biology class very easily. He teaches health and PE. It's fine. So I think some of that that's a state issue that they have to fix. But as far as a college coach looking, I would encourage them to, if they are thinking about doing it, to try to start getting back into school. There are all kinds of teacher certifications, alternate certification programs out there that you can do if you want to go coach or teach in a public school. Okay. A lot of people want to do that because the money's better. Not always the case, but in some cases it's better. Sean and I have the advantage. We have a whole lot of years of experience. So that takes care of, and your salary can be a little bit higher because of that. But yeah, look at some of the alternative certification programs. Every state has them. Look into getting into a private school if you can while you're working on that thing. If you sign up for an alternate certification program, sometimes you can still begin teaching as long as you're working through that program. So there's opportunities out there to do it. It just might take some time.
Bryan, what about the administration side? I don't know of a certificate for AD. I know there is professional development, but what about these type of jobs in the high school level?
I would highly recommend for college coaches that want to get out but stay in sports, go into high school administration, especially if you still want to coach, because there's a ton of schools across the country that are looking for individuals that are athletic directors and coaches. I was in a very unique spot that I was on the executive staff for the school. I actually transitioned out of being the athletic director, the director of athletics, into a more school-wide role with strategic development and advancement. It was more into fundraising. We were trying to do a big fundraising campaign, which all of us that coach in college, I mean, you don't raise money. I mean, shoot, you talk to donors all the time. I mean, that's part of the job. The skill set that you bring to an administrative side is vast. And just like Corey said, when you have that quote unquote college coach, beside your name, parents are a little bit more apt to listen to you because you got this kind of, persona that, hey, you're a college coach. You can help my kid get to the college level. So I mean, you have that kind of situation, and you have the connections. I mean, coaches from different sports. So, if a coach comes up, I mean, there were several instances that I got on the phone and called friends that were college coaches in various sports. They were recruiting, and they want to, hey, they're looking for a lacrosse player, they're looking for a tennis player, and you knew them from down the hall. I mean, how many great meetings, coffees and lunches and stuff that you have with other colleagues in other sports as a college coach that, you become friends. So, I mean, and there's tons of them. I mean, there's a ton of different opportunities out there. Finley Search Group. I'm trying to think of a couple of different instances. Isaacs, the National Independent Schools. There's Southern Teachers Association. There's, like I said, Finley Search Group. There's a bunch of different means that you can find jobs out there at the high school level in an administrative role. That you might also coach as well, because high schools are no different than college. They're trying to hire the best people, but at the same time, hey, hold on. You can be an administrator, but you also coach track. You also coach cross country. Well, hey, you just knocked out 6 sports for me, or 4 sports for me that you can coach. And it might also raise up your salary that you're making because you're getting the stipends for, all of those different sports. So, there's a lot out there, especially, the coaches that are in, city schools, or, school, like if you're in the Philadelphia area or in the Miami area or whatever it might be, there's tons and tons of schools out there. And I'm with those two guys. The private school realm is huge because a lot of them, you don't need the certifications and so forth to do certain things.
Now, if you're listening, I want to make this clear distinction here, because I've known a few ADs and I know a lot of high school coaches. We're not painting the picture that it is easier to coach or AD in the high school level. It's just a different level with different responsibilities and different priorities, if you will. So I was just thinking, I was like, man, Fetzer, you painting the picture like, wow, what am I doing? I was like, wait a minute, I've known enough ADs. You're there you're there at every football game. You're locking up the gym. So I just wanted to, and I know you weren't. I was just like, let's make sure that's clear.
Hey, it is a different. The nice thing about being in the high school setting is from mid-May to August. there's no games.
Right.
You're still involved, but you're doing a lot of quote unquote remote work.
Yeah, got it. All right,
it's just different perspectives.
Yeah.
For different, what do you value? What do you don't value?
Yeah.
What do you want to do?
All right, I got two last questions to wrap up. I want to hear from everybody on these. The first question is, it's kind of a big question. On its simplest form, the question is, would you do it again? And it's a little bit more complex question is, do you miss it? Do you miss coaching college if the right opportunity, those are kind of tough questions when you say the right opportunity, right? Because I mean, you're talking about perfection at that point, and that just doesn't exist, right? Fetzer, to your point about your wife, is like, well, wherever, yeah, sure. If there was a place where my wife would want to live, that she also had a job and it paid me X, and I only had to coach combined event shot put, So the question is, thinking about your careers and where they are today, very successful, what you have done in the past, which has led up to your success today, would you do it all over again? Would you still come to the high school level to coach? And I'm going to throw it up to whoever wants to answer that first, but I do want to hear from all three of you.
Well, for me, I'm at the right place at the right time. And I really believe that it's about trade-offs, and I don't know that I work any more or any less, but I do miss some aspects of the collegiate job. I do miss the coaching in the big situations at an SEC meet or a conference meet or NCAA meet or even at some of the majors, the World Championships or the Olympics. Those are things that I do miss. I was fortunate to throughout this coaching career to check off some of those boxes as I was as a collegiate coach. So there's not that great draw for me to go back right now. Now it's the situation that I'm supposed to be in, and one that I'm happy in this role. I do miss it. I won't lie to you, but I tell you what, as Corey and I talked a couple of weeks ago, we were done at 5:30, and the phone didn't ring, and I wasn't at home recruiting, and I wasn't trying to share time with the family and also do the job that I was tasked to do. And so my time is more my time, I feel, right now. And that is really something that I have to keep reminding myself of, when I'm watching, athletes at the NCAA meet, or I'm watching the Olympics on TV or things like that. So I would just say that it, again, it's just trade-offs, and it's what is right for you at the time, and what is the right situation for you at that particular time in your life.
And we've hinted around it with NIL, transfer portal, et cetera. Those are all part of it as well. And, we're getting NIL on the high school side as well. So that's part of that trade-off. Corey, Fetz, you miss it? Would you do it all over again? What's your thoughts? Don't make me call on you. You're not shy guys.
I'll go next. No, I mean, do it all over again at the collegiate level. I think if the right situation ever occurred, potentially, but I doubt it. I enjoy the business side of things, of what we're doing. It would take a very unique situation that I enjoy it 100%. Probably what I miss the most is the relationship piece with other coaches, seeing people, because you get in, a frame of seeing people on a regular basis, right? You get in you see the same faces, different times of the year. And track and field is very different than football, or very different than basketball or baseball, where you're competing opposite individuals. Track and field, I might be standing next to Sean for 2 hours, during, in a multi competition, or, hey, we're having the deck and we're there and you're talking intermittently. And then you also, get to know coaches from other sports. Some of my closest friends never coached track and field. They were basketball coaches or football coaches or tennis coaches that were down the hall from me, and we've stayed in touch. People I met at Ball State. I think Stephanie White. She was a basketball coach. She's head coach at the Connecticut Sun now. And Stephanie and I become good friends for a long time. And I think other people that you meet along the way. So that's what you miss. You miss the relational piece of it.
Yeah.
I would do some things different if I went back. Do I think going back into the high school situation is something I would ever do? Probably not. That wasn't for me. Again, I'm a little more business oriented. My thought process is a little different than per se, the high school. Like I said, my head of school, I used to drive nuts because I was, how do we become the best high school in the history of high schools? How do we do this? Let's, do it. And it's just not necessarily practical in certain aspects. But I enjoy doing the business side. It's my mind's a little more entrepreneurial than it is educational per se.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Corey?
I think it's always easy to talk about what could have been, right? We have these defining moments in our lives. If to go back and do it all again, I would start teaching right out of college, like I probably should have in high school. I can, like, in a perfect world, I could see me doing 30 years in high school and then go and find a small college to work at in retirement, if that makes sense. And doing that until I couldn't do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, I'm, like Sean said, I think I'm in a great place. This school is awesome. We get to be who we are. The day-to-day is different, right? Like in high school, like we get here in the morning and it's go, 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 go all the way, only until 5 or 5:30, but it is go. You don't have time. Like that's one of the things I miss the most, is the time that you had to just chill. Like we could go, hey, you might tell the staff, hey, let's go get lunch.
Right.
And you go sit at a Mexican restaurant for an hour and a half or so, right? Talking about the sport and what the training session is going to be that day and what, who we're bringing to the meet this week. But like that relationship stuff and the easiness of kind of the day-to-day, is different. And I do miss that. And like Bryan said, the moments throughout the year, I had to smile when he was talking about it because you look forward to that, right? Okay, we're going to Texas Relays, so I'm going to get to talk to all those guys that I talk to at Texas Relays every year. And then, okay, the regional meet is coming, and I get to go to the regional meet, and we get to all hang out, right? Or we get to go to Eugene for nationals, and you get to go to the Duck, and you get to do all of the things that you do, right, at those events. You miss that kind of stuff. But right now, I'm in a good place, and I'm happy.
That's a good point about the high school. It's go, go, go because you're regiment. You have periods and lunch period and things like that. Where in college, it is much more laid back, but there's like these spikes of intensity, if you will,
That's right.
Whether it's practice or a meet or traveling, etc. That's really good. All right, gentlemen, my last question. It's really a request, not a question. You've got a large audience right now that are listening to the podcast, and right now, when we're actually recording this, so we're recording this in the middle of October, not sure when you're actually listening to this, I'm a little torn. There's been a couple of social media posts from coaches that break my heart. However, because those people were brave enough to talk about their experiences, it gives me hope and for the betterment of our people who choose to be track coaches. There's a lot of, and you gentlemen know this, there's a lot of sadness is probably the word I would use in the coaching community. And a lot of it comes to what, some of the topics we talked today, specifically balance, whether it's parenthood, relationship, We have a lot of coaches financially, relationships aren't doing well. Corey, their relationship with their faith is not going very well, and there's a lot of sadness out there that's going on. So you've got an audience listening now. You have done something that I think a good number of coaches have thought about doing, but again, because of a lot of different reasons, have chosen not to take that next step. What would be your advice to that coach that's listening right now that's uncertain? They've thrown balance out the window, and now they're starting to realize maybe that was a mistake, or maybe now it's time to have balance. Maybe high school is the right place for me. Maybe a private business is the right place for me. That's options as well. What would be your best advice to coaches that were in a lot of the same situations that you guys were in some of your past professions? Who wants to go first on that one?
I'll go first.
Please.
I think the first thing that you have to do, just as a person, a man or a woman, is to know your why. Bryan talked about, doing your own personal core values, but know your why. And you have to sit and meditate and contemplate with that sometimes. And maybe you need to go on a retreat, or maybe you just need to go on a walk on the beach or whatever, or go camping by yourself. But know your why. And once you do that, then some of the decisions can start becoming a little easier. You need to be humble, right? If you're making that change, be humble. And then like I think you have to, when you start looking for a place, and this goes both ways, whether you're trying to go from high school to college, or college to high school, you need to recruit that next place the same way we ask recruits to recruit schools they want to go to, right? Because if you get into the wrong situation, everything that you were dreaming that it was going to be, it could not be that. And then you get like this bad taste in your mouth about something that could have been great had you spent the time recruiting the school better, right? And understand what the administration is like. Want to understand what the expectation is. Bryan mentioned earlier, like in a lot of schools and small schools, the ADs, even big schools, they have no expectations of track and field, right? Don't get in trouble. Don't come to my office, right? So, but like what I saw at a small mid-major was there were no expectations until, as coaches, we raised the bar in our program and started asking for stuff, right? And then all of a sudden, like it caused this big stink. Like you have no expectations for us when we're bad. But now all of a sudden we have guys at the national meet, we have guys going to the Olympic Games and like all of this stuff. And so we need more so we can keep getting better. And they're like, no. Go back to being nobody. Right. So that's frustrating. So you need to find out if that's what it's going to be at your place, because there are small schools, right? I think about what's his name in Florida, the Fire.
Oh, yeah.
Dotson.
Yep.
Dotson.
Yep,
Look what he's doing at that school. First year program. I'm like, they just start the program, and he has that place. I mean, they're crushing it, right? But he found a school that wanted to buy into track and field, and so they're building something great. So do some homework, just like at the college level when kids come to recruit, and he's like, hey, go recruit these schools. Find out a place that fits for you, because you're going to be there for 4 or 5 or 6 years, and it has to fit, or you're gonna get there, and within the first semester you're going to want to go home or go somewhere else.
That's great. I love that, Corey. That's really, really good. Fetzer, Sean, who wants to go next?
Yeah. Again, I would agree with Corey that you got to figure out why you're doing it and what is important to you at the time. And again, life is just a series of choices and trade-offs, and the decisions that you make today might not be the same decision you'll make 5 years from now. But I do agree that you should find out what you're getting into. Mm-hmm. And I would encourage high school coaches that do want to make the jump to the collegiate level. Talk to people, have them share some of the experiences that they've had, and ask them, why you're in it, and what you love and what you don't love about it. For me, coming back, it was a homecoming. And I don't know what it is about Louisiana, but there's a whole hell of a lot of guys that venture out away from here and end up coming back. I don't know. Maybe
it's the
food. maybe that's another podcast for you. There's some great coaches in this state that would be very successful anywhere in the country, but choose to stay here. And then talk to your family and friends, and see if this is a journey that they want to take, because it's not just about you, especially when you're married and do have a family. It's about everybody, and uprooting them and moving to a place or an environment that they don't like or care for could potentially be troublesome for you.
That's really good advice. That you're not. There's an old saying: if you want to travel fast, travel alone. If you want to travel far, travel with others. Well, if we're talking about careers and lives here, that means you've got others with you, family, friends, etc. That's really good, Sean. Sure. All right, Fetzer, you've got you're the anchor leg here. What advice would you have?
I mean, I need to be taking notes. I mean, I wish I would have heard this stuff when I was a younger coach.
Amen.
I mean, it's so true what Sean said. I mean, if you don't have a mentor, or if you don't have a group of coaches that you can go to, I don't care what your high school level, college level, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. If you don't have a core group of individuals that you can talk to and ask, get them. There's plenty of coaches out there. This thing's gone on 2 hours. We all like to talk. It's not something that doesn't happen. So find people that you can talk to and ask them, and keep in mind, it is not always the greenest grass where you think it is. You think Division I is the thing, there's going to be issues. Division III, Division II, junior college, private high school, big high school, rural city, it does not matter. You got to know what you're getting into, what Sean said, because what you think you might want, you might not actually want. But ask people, talk to people, and find that group of people that you can confide with, whether you're a guy or a girl, that group that you can sit down and have real conversations with. My choices being married are very different than my choices when I was single. And I mean, I said the word perspective like 5 million times, I think. But it's so true, keep that in the back of your head of what you want to do, and talk to individuals and see what it's like. Spend a lot of time. I mean, I'm a man of faith. No, I don't make any decisions without, praying about it and spending time with it. If that's what you do that. Seek friends that they're in that same situation. If you're not, then seek friends that you admire their advice and where they're at. Coaching is an incredible opportunity. It also comes with, a credible level of expectations and a very high level of, you have to do things with integrity, and you have to do things because you are shaping future generations. So keep that in mind. That's responsibility. And it's one of the last beacons of hope we have. So take it well and love the journey.
Fetz gave us our first old man on the lawn. He also ends us with the coach's version of the Spider-Man: with great power comes great responsibility. I appreciate that, Fetzer. You just need a pipe and a little smoking jacket.
I've got a sweater on.
I know. I kind of
I'm up in Pennsylvania right now, and I'm typically in Florida, so this is a different part for me.
Well, I do miss seeing Fetz around at the track meets. So he was one of the good guys from the big schools that talk to the little guys like us, and
he will
always appreciated that.
He will text you a picture of himself, so you can always have it with you. Gentlemen, what strikes me is that all three of you, in your own unique, awesome ways, said about knowing your why. And I think at our ages and stages, I think that's easy to either look back on at times that we've done it or know that we've done it recently. When you are a 22, 23, 25-year-old GA, first-time assistant, volunteer assistant, it's a lot harder to sit down and realistically think about your why. So my advice to those listening is kind of a layer on top of your great advice there. And that is, when you eventually get there, do it. Whether that's 30 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old, first job, second job, when you hopefully my hope and prayer is that you are able to sit down and really dive into your why before disaster or emergency or crisis occurs. But a lot of times that's what brings us to our knees, if you will, and we sit down and go, why am I really into this? And is what I'm doing today continuing that journey, or is it actually in the way of that journey? So just so grateful for you guys to be here. This is a part of the big puzzle to hopefully help people continue to have great, fulfilling, meaningful lives that hopefully center around coaching track and field. I still think, what coaches do, 99% of you guys have had amazing careers. All of you have coached unbelievable people that have made it to the very, very highest level, and still 99.9% of the kids that you coached didn't go on to be pro or Olympics, but 100% of them went on to be moms and dads and brothers and sisters and business owners, clergy, teachers, coaches. That to me is the real benefit that coaches like yourself give society. And so anything that we can do, and I appreciate you guys being on the journey with me today on this, to help those individuals, that's going to help society. That's the real benefit. All right, Fetz, you wanted the last word.
No. I was just going to say, hey, if anybody, whatever need, just somebody to talk to in coaching ranks. I know I've had a bunch of coaches that have gotten out, that have reached out. Shoot me an email, Mike. Please leave. You can leave it in the
show notes. Yep.
Thing, direct message on social media, whatever. And I would probably say that Sean and Corey would say the same thing. I think that's sure. Something that can be helpful.
Awesome. I love it. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. It's the most valuable thing that you can give me, and just so grateful for your servant leadership. It's because of people like you and many, many others that, aren't here today in this podcast, but there's many others that have the same heart stance towards others. And I'm just glad that we were able to get it on wax, as they say, and help others. So thank you so much for being here today. Guys, thank you for being here today listening. I hope you receive value. I really think maybe there's a lot of rewinds here and taking more notes. And if this is a concern of yours personally, to Fetzer's point, reach out to someone. If you have the same heart posture as these gentlemen do as well, then help someone. Go be that someone. Go be that mentor for someone else, because we can always use that in our world. So thanks again. Join us next week. We'll do it all over again. Thanks, guys.